Hey hockey player, in this video I'm going to be doing an Ask Coach Garner where I answer all of your questions that we've compiled on hockey specific nutrition. Let's get into it here and start it off with, we've all heard about Sidney Crosby's pre-game meal being a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Is there any science-based benefit to such a pre-game meal choice? Short answer, no. Long answer, yes. It's kind of a tough one because you have to consider the marriage between psychological and physiological performance. So the short answer being no is true because on paper, that is a poor choice for a pre-game meal. In terms of the amino acid content, the carbohydrate type choice, the fat content, the fiber content, I've gone over this in real depth in the past in terms of pre-game meal nutrition and what it should look like, and it certainly doesn't look like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich from an optimal perspective in terms of physiology only. However, you have to consider the performance benefits of athlete psychology. Athletes are some of the most ritualistic people on the planet. Whether it's before a hockey game, before a fight, before any sort of competition, you'll see athletes, they might do a prayer, they might do a certain stretch, they might have a certain meal, they might do a certain breathing routine. Whatever it is, athletes, what they have is a bridge from their normal life to their high-performing life. And in between, that bridge is built of a pre-game ritual. Lots of mind-body connections, and the way in which they approach it varies from one another. So if I were to say, Sidney Crosby, what you're doing is absolutely wrong, you should be having this meal. Although it may physiologically support him for better muscular performance in terms of electrolyte status, hydration, amino acid content, and glycogen and glucose availability, he may now have a disrupted ritual prior to his game to where even though he was given an improved physiological meal for better hockey performance, he may actually perform worse because he wasn't able to utilize the bridge that he's used for his entire life to transform himself into that sports science flow state of optimal performance. Short answer, no. Long answer, yes, specifically for him. Ideally, in the best world, there's a huge difference between good and optimal. So the hockey players of today, moving forward, should create a ritual that involves the best physiological outcome with their own specific psychological prep routine. That's where the best performance in the world truly is found from this point moving forward, to where you would follow my pre-game meal suggestions and calculations and outlines, but incorporate it into your own ritual so you still have that bridge, but it's a stronger, better bridge for yourself. Next question is, how do you feel about eating in between periods? Don't do it, okay? In terms of eating in between periods, you have to look at everything in terms of a cost-benefit analysis. When you're looking at the cost-benefit, comparing liquid nutrition in comparison to solid food nutrition, liquid nutrition is going to win 10 times out of 10 because of faster metabolization, faster digestion and assimilation, lower gastrointestinal distress, and also an exact nutrient profile in terms of amino acids, carbohydrates, and electrolyte ratio and distribution that you can just have perfectly to support your hockey-specific demands out in the ice. Whereas if you try to mimic that with the food, it's going to be different, and it's also going to be harder to metabolize and digest, and not to mention slower to metabolize and digest. So it's not going to reach your muscle cell nearly as fast as it would with liquid nutrition. So in terms of eating in between periods, I say no. Consuming in between periods is excellent, and that's where my intra-game drink comes into play, the combinations of aminos, carbohydrates, and electrolytes, but not in the form of food. Save that for pre and post-game. That's where that belongs. Not to mention the convenience factor of just having a pre-made drink compared to having to bring food around with you in your game, especially if you're traveling at a tournament or something like that. Next question, is it bad to have a sports drink like Gatorade during a game? No, it's absolutely not bad. Gatorade is seen as bad by people who aren't necessarily educated in nutritional biochemistry. Gatorade is picked on simply because it's a major organization. Anything that's a major organization has the most media, and if you have the most media, then you have the widest reach. And if you have the widest reach, there's gonna be some haters in there sprinkled in just simply because of statistics. But in terms of what Gatorade has to offer, what does it offer? It offers liquid hydration, it offers electrolytes, it offers simple carbohydrates, which is what we want during the game. It offers a lot of the right things. However, again, there's a difference between good and optimal. Gatorade's good, but to call it optimal would be a far cry away from what the sports science today has to say. You are going to want a combination of amino acids and electrolytes and carbohydrates, and ideally these would be calculated for your own body weight and the length of the game as well. And that's why I've done extensive videos and articles on what to drink during hockey so that you can fill those needs in an optimal way rather than just a good way. So is Gatorade bad during a game? No. I would say it's actually good during a game, but I wouldn't say that it's optimal during a game. Next question, what's the best game day nutrition plan for games in the afternoon? Well, in terms of game day nutrition, you want to follow the 4 golden rules. When you're thinking about pre, during, and post-game, the 4 golden rules of optimizing your hockey-specific performance and recovery are to have a readily available flow of amino acids in the bloodstream. Number 2, to have a readily available flow of glucose in the bloodstream. Number 3, to have optimal hydration in the form of both water and electrolytes. And number 4, accomplish goals 1 through 3 while minimizing gastrointestinal distress. A lot of this has to do with having protein, amino acids, water, and electrolytes hugging the game in terms of pre, intra, and post. And then as a byproduct of that, having fiber and fats away from the game. So since you are having a game in an afternoon, I would suggest your morning meal be high protein, high fat, high fiber. And then your mid-morning meal be high protein, slow carbohydrate, and then a little bit of fat and fiber. But then your pregame meal should be right back to where our standard recommendation that we always have, a 1-to-1 ratio of protein to carbohydrates, very low fiber, very low fats. And then your intra and post game after that. And then if you would have your fats and your fiber again after your game if you wanted later on. So keep the fat and the fiber away from the game, and then that's really how you would set up your day. So an example of if somebody was going to play in the afternoon, I would say a high fat and high protein breakfast could simply be an omelet with cheese on it. And then you also want some fiber in there as well. So you could have it with some spinach in the omelet and some blueberries on the side. And then since we wanted a slow carbohydrate and protein meal in our mid-morning, then that is a situation where you could just have simply like chicken and quinoa, but we can still have fat and fiber there. So let's throw some healthy olive oil on it as well as some vegetables. And now getting into the actual pregame meal, we've already, for health purposes and hormonal and many other purposes regarding inflammation and other things like that, that fiber and fats offer us, we've already got that in. So we're not sacrificing our health at all. Now it's the time to focus on performance. Now performance for hockey means low fiber, low fat. So now we would have something like a chicken breast with white rice prior to a game. That would be perfect. We're getting the amino acid distribution and carbohydrates at the speed we need them, and then we're moving on to our drink during the game, which is the liquid carbohydrates, electrolytes, amino acids, and then post-game basically looks like the intra again, but we would have whole protein sources rather than just amino acids. And then after that is when you can reintroduce more fat and fiber again if you want to. So that's a quick basic breakdown of what it would look like. Next question is, what should I eat for breakfast before an early morning game? So if it's an early morning game, the rules are still the same, right? Amino acid availability, glucose availability, optimal hydration, minimal gastrointestinal distress. An early morning game just means that you don't have like 3 hours before the game to cook this big meal. And instead, you're getting up, you're kind of going right there. And because of that, you need something quick, in terms of digestion, but you also need something easy. So something like egg whites and a banana be a perfect option because you're getting your protein in, you've got no fat because there's no yolk there, and then a banana is an excellent source of some quick carbohydrates, but not a lot of fiber to slow down the digestion and assimilation. So egg whites and a banana could be perfect. If you want to go even easier, you could just do whey protein in a banana and blend that up into a type of smoothie and smash that on the way to the rink. You're still doing the same thing, a 1-to-1 ratio of protein to carbohydrates, but just make it quick and easy and make sure that they digest very fast, and you will be good to go. Those two options are the ones that immediately spring to mind. Be perfectly easy for you to do. Next question here is, what is a good off-the-shelf drink post-game? A good off-the-shelf drink post-game is not really how my brain works, you guys. I've had this question before, and I'll offer an equation so that you can dial in your nutrition. I'll tell you everything exactly what you need to do, and then I'll have someone say, I thought that you were just going to give us a product to buy, and then that would have been great. I would not be doing my job if I said, just go get that one. That's good enough. This is just not how my brain works. That would be good. It wouldn't be optimal. And as you are watching this video right now, which means you have a prerequisite of being a serious hockey player who is ready to get serious results. And when someone says, hey, can I just have one product? That I don't really work like that, because what I hear, the translation of that is, I'm okay to not perform and recover optimally today. So I would rather just have one scoop of something rather than have two products and do one scoop of each. Like, it's literally that simple. That's the only additional thing that you need to do. So in terms of off the shelf, I'll give you off the shelf products, but they're not combined into one, because that would mean that your game day drink would be the exact same as a youth athlete. So it would be the exact same as a teenager. It would be the exact same as an NHL. Zdeno Chara is having the same game day drink as a 15-year-old. Like, what are we talking about here, right? It has to be dialed in perfectly for the person. So I personally am a fan of ATP whey isolate for your whey protein needs. I'm a fan of ATP EAAs, essential amino acids, for your intra-game needs. And I'm a fan of ATP pentacarb, which is a 5 different types of carbohydrates, hence penta, but then it includes the correct electrolyte distribution for you. So it's kind of like a 2-for-1. So I like ATP pentacarb and ATP EAAs during, and then ATP pentacarb and ATP whey post. And that would be for your workouts and your games and your practices. Very simple stuff. You want to cover all your bases to make sure you're doing everything you can to become a better hockey player. Coach Dan, are there any things kids should avoid nutrition-wise? Yeah, of course, right? And it's kind of the same things that adults should avoid. I would say the number one thing that holds kids back is too much sugar. And then the second thing that holds kids back is not enough protein. It's really how the youth diet normally works. There's lots of sugar, not a lot of protein. But one thing that's very important to understand in terms of changing a kid's diet is the long-term effects of that. We are molded, not just our body, but our psychology is molded at a young age. Even in talking to psychiatrists and stuff, you see like people are constantly, they were built when they were younger and they still struggle with it later in life, even if it's completely irrelevant to their life now. This happens in the athlete world a lot, but it normally happens in the nutritional department, where athletes develop a very poor relationship with food because they put things in good and bad categories. So when it comes to working with youth athletes, I like to think of an inclusion mindset rather than an exclusion mindset. So we want them to exclude sugar and we want them to include protein. But luckily for us, protein is the number one most satiating nutrient in the nutrition world. What does that mean? Satiation just simply means that you're going to feel fuller longer. So if you had 100 calories of carbohydrates and 100 calories of protein, protein will make you feel fuller longer than the carbohydrates, even though they're the exact same caloric load. So what does this say to someone like you and me? Well, instead of breakfast cereal in the morning, we could change it over to an omelet. way healthier, way better protein source, way less sugar. So we didn't say, you can't have breakfast cereal. We instead just served an omelet. So the psychology remains healthy and great, and there's no exclusion and punishment. And instead, something just naturally fell away. Instead of saying no fruit juice ever, you could just serve up more water. And that's something where instead of we banish something, we just simply serve more water with the meal. Instead of the examples could go on forever, right? Instead of fast food, we just have home meals. Instead of sending them to school with like peanut butter and honey sandwich, we send them to school with a turkey sandwich. It's less sugar and more protein. You just think ways in which we can include something so that there's a natural exclusion of the things that we don't want. That's the perfect way in which you can give everything a youth athlete needs in order for them to thrive, but not impact the long-term relationship that they have with food, which is as equally important as their hockey performance right now, okay? I hope that one made sense. Next question here. What should you eat the day before a game? Will that matter, or does it only matter when you eat on game day? It absolutely matters. And not only does what you eat the day before matter on game day, but what you ate the day before that matters. What the day you ate before that matters. The day you ate before that matters. All of it matters. Hockey is a 365-day job if you want to get the best out of yourself. No athletes just are able to just say, oh, well, I had my pre-game meal, I'm optimally fueled. It doesn't really work like that. That's like putting high-performance fuel in a junkyard car and asking the car, like, hey, why aren't you performing like a Ferrari right now? The car is built in the long term. Your body is built in the long term. Short bursts of excellent habits don't overcome the long durations of poor habits. That's why you see people who roller coaster diet, they never actually maintain their results because they don't understand that intensity doesn't get you results. Consistency is what gets you results. Biology responds to adaptations over time. So consistency beats intensity 10 times out of 10. So you saying, can I just eat well on game day? You can't, because it would be like putting high performance fuel in a car that is not a high performer. You got to put the right fuel in your body all the time if you want to have the high performance car who's going to perform like a high performance vehicle on race day. For you, as a hockey player, your vehicle is your body. And what is going to fuel that vehicle is a good hockey-specific diet. So I recommend eating well every single day, and then, of course, on game day as well. But in my mind, there's no difference. It's very popular to talk about game day nutrition, but in terms of what gets you results, from a coach's and a professional's perspective, 5 days ago's nutrition is as important as today, even if you're playing a game tonight. It's the same to me because that consistency factor is way more important than that isolated great effort factor. It's just like not practicing ever, and then showing up on tryouts and being really motivated. It's not gonna go that well, despite the intensity and intention for the day. It's the long-term habits that matter the most. Next question, as a 13-year-old, what would be an average day of eating? Like what amounts and types of food should I be eating on a daily basis? So don't think in terms of amounts. I don't really recommend counting calories or counting macronutrients until you're at least 18 years old. And then honestly, even older than that. You want it right now at 13 years old. I want you to focus on is just to eat real food. Okay, eat real food. What does real mean? Something that actually grew or breathes. Real animal food, real plant food, nothing that's packaged. If someone told me this in my youth, I would have made a tremendous amount of better progress than I did. Because what did I do? I ate a lot of processed junk in my youth, and then I was the guy who kind of thought that supplements would make up for it. I placed, and I call it majoring in the minors. I placed a huge amount of importance on something that would get me a minor result. I had my creatine, my whey protein, my nitric oxide. I had my herbs set up. I had all these things perfectly in line, and then it's like, why aren't I making the progress that other people are making? Well, because food is infinitely more important than any type of supplement. And if you can learn this at 13, you will be amazed at the progress that you will make with just food. It's something that I know adults in their 40s and 50s still don't understand, and they still look for that one magic bullet. If you can simply have healthy, whole foods each and every single day, you will be doing yourself an amazing favor, and that favor will return you with better hockey performance and better hockey recovery. So in terms of amounts, don't worry about it. Just think about eating real things. And you also say what types of food, real food, something that breathes or something that grew. And then an average day of eating, just try to put a protein, a healthy carb, and a healthy fat with each meal. That'd be totally good. A protein, a carb, and a fat with every single meal of the day, okay? So you're something like an omelet for breakfast, and then you could have a turkey sandwich and an apple for lunch, and then for dinner you could have steak and potatoes, that type of thing. These are all real foods that contain a protein source, a fat source, and a healthy carb source. And then if you really want to dial things in, the game day nutrition recommendations I've been talking about would be beneficial for you too. As a 13-year-old, nothing wrong with taking carb powder and whey protein in order to support your performance and recovery as well. So that's the only area where I'd recommend maybe not having just something real food, because intra and post game, you want that speed of metabolization. But besides that, you have to eat solid food to be solid. Next question here. What foods do you recommend for a person who wants to gain weight and has a fast metabolism? Too many hockey players, they want to gain weight on like pre-contest bodybuilding food. It's easy to get into working out and then listen to bodybuilders because they've been doing it forever. But then you're listening to the food that they're eating while they're trying to step on stage for a show. They're trying to step on stage for a show at like 2% body fat. So they're eating the foods that are going to allow them to shrink. And yet I see so many people in the sports world try to eat the same foods and think that they're going to build muscle with it. And like they'll have chicken breast and broccoli. Like, you couldn't pick two lower calorie foods. Instead of chicken and broccoli, why don't you have steak and potato? You're gonna get the same amount of protein and just a way bigger calorie load for the same type of meal. Instead of having egg whites and an orange, you could have an omelet and oatmeal. Instead of having your tuna and rice cakes, have salmon and quinoa. Salmon is a fatty fish. So you want to actually think, okay, how can I deliver more fat with this meal? Like, instead of chicken breast, have chicken thighs. Instead of tilapia, have salmon. Instead of egg whites, have eggs. Instead of extra lean 99% ground beef, have just a fatty steak. Find ways to get more. That's like the real secret to gaining weight, is to find ways to get more calories in without impacting the satiety index. So you're getting more calories delivered to your body without impacting how full you feel, because that's what holds a lot of hockey players back. So that's one big solution. A second big solution that I like is pouring 2 tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil on every single meat and carb meal of the day. So if you have steak and rice, or if you have chicken thighs and quinoa, or if you have salmon and pasta, whatever it is, pour 2 tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil on each of those meals. You won't get any fuller from the meal, but it's gonna add an extra 300 calories per meal. Super, super, super simple way in order to gain weight. Another easy option to gain weight is to have a handful of raw nuts in between meals. The raw nuts are incredibly calorie dense, and yet they're great sources of healthy fats, of vitamins, of minerals, of antioxidants, of polyphenols, of phytonutrients. They've got tons of great stuff in them, and yet they're calorie dense. So they can give you the good weight that you want rather than just the weight that you're gonna get from McDonald's or something. So that's another option for you. And I think the last thing I would mention in terms of gaining weight is making your own weight gaining shake. If there's one thing I learned in my youth, again, learn from my mistakes, is that weight gainers don't put on mass. I was a very, very, very skinny and smaller kid, and especially in later high school, like grade 11 and grade 12. And it's funny because I was so small and yet I was just killing weight gainers. Weight gainers, they went right through me. And you look at it and it's also pure junk. Even the ones that try to tell you that they're not junk, they are absolutely junk. So if you do want to have a weight gaining shake, I think it's a great idea, but make it with real food. Have a banana, peanut butter, and whey protein. It's a million times healthier. It's still got a ton of calories, and it's something that's gonna stick to you. Again, you have to eat solid food to be solid. Don't want you to forget that. What type of meal would you recommend after late night games that end close to midnight? It's just your post-workout, your post-game shake. I wouldn't sit down and have a big meal because the research is pretty clear that if you have a giant meal right before bed, you can disrupt your sleep quality. So I would rather just have a big post-game shake. Very simple. This would be, the shake in terms of formulation would be 0.5 gram of protein per kilo of body weight, and then 1 gram of carbohydrate per kilo of body weight. Smash that immediately post-game, and you are going to be good to go. And then you'll have something that metabolized the way it should and won't impact your sleep quality. Next question here. What do you think about a plant-based diet for hockey players? I think it could be great. I think, though, it's a moral decision rather than this is going to be the game changer for me. It's not, okay? So in terms of animal-based versus plant-based, if you do it right, the performance and recovery can be the same, for sure. But it's a moral decision rather than your next big thing. Don't expect that to happen because it's not gonna happen, okay? The people telling you that you're gonna perform and recover 1,000,000 times better on a plant-based diet, that is not argued in real nutritional science circuits. That's only argued in documentaries and things like that, where people are selling entertainment rather than science. Real science is boring. So whenever you put together a documentary, you gotta have an angle and you gotta be entertaining. And in order for it to have an angle and for it to be entertaining, you're sacrificing the scientific method before you even start recording. Anything that's made to be entertaining and have an angle is sacrificing an unbiased nature. And that's why real science is boring and real science doesn't get documentaries. So plant-based dieting, is it bad? Certainly not. I'm not saying that at all. It's as good as an animal-based program, but it's not better. So if you're doing it because you think it's going to be the next thing to unlock your game, it's not. I would just dial in your current diet. But if you're doing it for moral choices, then your performance won't decrease. So it's definitely up to you. And I actually even offer vegetarian plans in the programs here at hockeytraining.com. I made animal-based plans and plant-based plans come with every program here at Hockey Training. Next question, is the keto diet okay for a hockey player? So this is one where I would say no. Hockey is a glycolytic sport, meaning glucose and glycogen are our preferred fuel sources out in the ice. Glycogen is our primary resource for anaerobic activity out in the ice. That's a stored form of carbohydrates. But what a lot of people don't know is glucose is actually the preferred fuel source for the nervous system out in the ice. So where glycogen is working the muscle, which is the engine of our vehicle, glucose is what's actually supporting the driver, which is the nervous system of our vehicle. Our nervous system is what actually recruits muscle fibers and allows them to contract with the highest amount of velocity. So in order to have a scientific method to support hockey performance and knowing it is physiologically glycolytic, we need to have the vehicle and the driver at full capacity. That means glycogen and glucose need to be tightly taken care of, and that's why I'm so strict about that regarding the 4 golden rules of the pre, intra, and post-game nutrition. So the keto diet is one where I would say that is the plant-based diet. It will not result in a performance decrease if you do it right, but the keto diet will result in a performance decrease specifically for hockey. There's health benefits to it, but there's not hockey benefits to it. Next question. I'm 17 years old and my metabolism's high. You're saying that like it's a complaint. Old guys like me are like, come on. I'm 17 years old and my metabolism's still high. Should I still watch what I eat? Of course you should. Of course you should. Just because someone looks good on the outside doesn't mean they're healthy on the inside. A truly holistic approach to hockey performance is centered around both the outside in and the inside out. We want to utilize the equations for calories, macronutrients, and micronutrients to ensure we're providing everything that we can to support hockey performance from the outside in, coming into our body. But from the inside out, we want to have the physiological balance that necessitates and creates optimal performance. Things like hormone balance, your inflammatory status, your micronutrient availability, your vitamin and mineral sufficiencies or insufficiencies, your gut health, your microbiome, your epigenetics. These are all things that are all inside out mediated that can play a major impact on how you're going to perform in the dryland training, but also how you're going to perform out in the ice. So just because someone has abs, their outside in may be cool, but their inside out is not the hockey player that's going to perform the best out in the ice. You can picture it like a Ferrari with a Civic engine. It looks great on the outside, but then you turn the engine on, you hit the gas, and you're like, I thought this was a Ferrari. What's going on? So that's what I want you to think about. So just because you got a high metabolism, that means you stay lean, which is awesome, no doubt. But the inside-out factors of all those things I mentioned just off the top of my head, those can't be ignored if you're taking a truly holistic and optimal approach to becoming the best hockey player you can be. Last question. What video should or what food should or can I eat a couple hours before a game for energy? What I've talked about previously, the 1-to-1 ratio of protein to carbohydrates is ideal. Anywhere from 30 to 45 grams of protein, anywhere from 30 to 45 grams of carbs is an excellent option. What does this look like in person? About a 5-ounce serving of chicken breast and 1 cup of rice. Keep it super simple. You could also do 1 cup of egg whites and half a cup of dry measured oats. That would be the same thing. There's a lot of ways to do it here, but that is the vehicle at which you want to do it in. The macros you want to follow, what foods you choose are kind of up to you. And with that said, I'm actually just gonna thank you guys for all the questions right now, because for more information on all of this, you can check out hockeytraining.com/nutrition. You don't have to submit your email. You don't have to download anything. You don't have to do anything. It's a 100% free manual for you guys to go check out that answers everything on calories, macros, micros, pregame, intergame, postgame, snacks. You name it, it's all there. I created the perfect resource that I think is mandatory viewing for all hockey players to check out to take their game to the next level. All right? Thank you all so much for submitting your questions. If you found this video beneficial, please do me a favor. I would love it if you smash the thumbs up button and also subscribe to our hockey training channel here. And don't forget, go to hockeytraining.com/nutrition and let's crush this thing.